um, excited to talk to you today.
Thank
We are
you.
celebrating our Black History Month, and Drumbeat would like to do some stuff with the Black communities. And this year, really, we chose to talk to young people or Black people, people from African, Caribbean, and Black communities to talk
Right,
um, to celebrate this thing in an art way. And
right.
you are one of them. And I thought, hey, I will be very happy to talk to you. And then you can explain to me about your piece, which I thought was totally amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Honored to be here.
Yeah, great. So tell me, who are you?
For sure. So I'm Kay the Chosen. I am an artist from Zimbabwe, but obviously currently here in Calgary. Um, Very inspired by the arts. My parents have always been very open to me reading, attending plays, being parts of like school productions. So as much as I am a hip hop artist, I think I really consider myself just a storyteller. I tend to, listen to other people and their experiences and then share those experiences in my music.
You came to school here. You were not in the arts. You were totally doing something different, right?
Yeah, no, so I came to Canada for university. So grew up in Zimbabwe. The first time in Canada was to start my degree at the University of Calgary. So I was studying business at the School of Haskell. So I would say, yeah, no, definitely I didn't come in as an artist. I'd always been making music even back home.
Mhm.
But I think this is kind of where I got into like the professional realm because, now there was a bit more freedom. University tends to be about time management. So, I found the time to go to open mics. I had the
Mhm.
resources to record quality music. And then just meeting other like-minded individuals allowed me to really grow my art. But I also do a bit of spoken word as well, just because rap and poetry are so closely related. So quite often, like I was saying before, I just listen to people's experiences, and I find uh, when I was in university, I was living on res for the first 2 years, so I was meeting a lot of international students, and I found that we had a lot of similarities in our paths and our stories,
Mhm.
but also the fact that you hear one person's story, and if it's not relatable to you, you still feel some sense of empathy because like, oh, okay, wow, like I can't relate to that experience, but I can imagine what it's like to be in that. So with my music, I try to take people to like different worlds and understand, okay, this is what life in Zimbabwe is like, or this is what it's like to be, a child of African fathers and whatnot.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really try to use my music to kind of give people access to stories that they might not consider or
Mhm.
might not have heard of before, just to kind of open their worldview.
Tell me about this piece. Mhm.
So this one, Dear African Fathers, as I was mentioning before, it's about that experience of, what is it like to grow up in an African household? And I think there's always pros and cons to everything. I find sometimes parents of color tend to be a bit more strict. They tend to be a bit more um, very directed or like stuck in their beliefs, maybe conservative, if you want to say.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this can be good in some aspects, in that you end up having children that are well mannered, children that really respect others, and tend to have like a bigger sense of community because they're so family oriented. But sometimes it can come across as a bit harsh, a bit um, it doesn't open up conversations between the children and the parent. It can be like a very
Mhm.
strong power dynamic where it's you do as I say, don't do as I do, don't question what I'm doing, whatever I say
Mhm.
is correct. And obviously that can have long-term effects on children where you've never been able to have an open and honest conversation about things that are going on in your life. Things can be going on in the family, things can be going on in school, but your base, your family is not open enough to let you speak about that. So really the song just looks at, okay, how does African parenting, particularly from the father side of things, affect children and their perspective of the world.
This piece, Dear African Father,
Mhm.
speak of social justice. How do you see that the change that you're seeking in it?
Right. So I feel quite often like it's not even that parent's fault. It's probably the same way that they were raised, right? So quite often, you just continue or you copy what you've been brought up with. So the idea was, to say, look, if I want to see something different in the way
Mhm.
that people are being parented, I have to address these issues myself. And then, it will then reflect as me as a father, reflect in my child, and, going forward. So that's why it's literally addressing them by saying, hey, dear African father, this is an open letter. Let's discuss, what are the impacts of what we do. And I think if we can get those conversations going, you end up having people wonder, oh, I didn't notice that my actions had this kind of impact on my children. Hey, now I understand where you're coming from, but also they can now say, okay, I understand, why you parent this way. And it ends up being like, it's not necessarily meant to be a blaming thing, to be like, oh, you're wrong because of this, but more of a, hey, I've noticed that your actions have affected me in this way. What if we tried this approach? But in order to try something new, you have to address what's happening currently.
You said something very important, because let's break the chain, right?
Right.
Because people only do what they know.
Exactly.
And if that's how they were raised, that's how they will raise you. And if that chain is not broken, you also will raise your children the same way. Tell me, there's that piece in the in your hip hop, in your song, right, where Chico, Mdara, because some of the people who will be watching it, they might not understand what that is. Talk a little bit about that Chico and that chorus. What does that mean, in translated into English for other people who are listening who might not understand what that means?
So I think that's a beautiful question leading up from what we just discussed, like that, coming to Zimbabwe, coming to North America. My music, I try to make sure that, hey, yeah, like you said, someone looks at me, they just think Black artist. But I'm like, no, let me tell you a little bit about home. So I find, like, when I can, I try to make choruses that use the two languages. And for this one, I felt, okay, the verses need to be in English so that people understand the core context. But then the messaging of the hook needs to be felt. I don't need you to necessarily understand what's being said, but just listen to what I'm saying and the rhythm. And you're like, okay, cool. Clearly he's speaking to someone, So the Chico is such a simplified hook. All I'm saying is, what's going on, Father? What's happening? What's happening? It's just an open-ended question to say, look, I know that you mean well. I know that, you are trying to raise your kids the best way you can. But no, listen to these verses. What's happening? Like, why they're not connecting? If you're saying this is love, why is this your version of love? Why does your love hurt those around you? And at the end of the day, really just show them love. That's all you have to do. You don't, it's not about the money. It's not about, raising your kids better than next door, but genuinely show them, that you care about them. And after that, everything will fall into place.
How does this change influence Black health?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, again, not being able to speak to your parents about things like, if you're going through a mental health crisis or just a regular health crisis, maybe it's your physical health that's at risk. If you can't speak to your primary caregiver, what are the chances you're going to go to a professional? What are the chances that you're going to make decisions that are good for you and the people around you? So, for example, if you're stressed and, you begin to exhibit aggressive behavior, this could lead to long-term effects, in that, if you get into a fight with someone, or, you injure someone poorly, your life has already gone down a certain path. And, most people will stop at that part, that, no, this is an aggressive person. But you need to take a couple of steps back and say, no, but how did it get to this physical manifestation of their stress? It starts mental, it starts at home. So just having that connection with family allows people to develop better, but also for us, again, to address issues as a community, to say, okay, what is mental health in the Black community? We all know it's something that rarely comes up. It's laziness, it's, you're not trying hard enough. But, if you've got this more open-minded approach to parenting, and children are able to communicate with their caregivers, I think it benefits just the community health, which not just only affects this generation, but generations to come, because these things are not left until it gets to a dire state. We're addressing things as they come up.
This month, February, is Black History Month. What does that mean to you? You're a Black man, you're a young man, you lived a Black life. What does Black History Month mean to you?
So this one is always an interesting one, because, as I mentioned, I'm from Zim. So, you know, obviously our Black history is a bit different from the North American Black history. Obviously, we had our own wars and relationships with colonizers. But, you know, for North American history is to do more with their history on this side. So Black history for me, I always find as an opportunity, one, to reflect on my own history, to say, hey, you know, what was you know, what have our forefathers in Zimbabwe fought for in order for us to have our freedom back home? But also, what have those in North America and those who've maybe lost that connection to their Caribbean or African homes, how have they come to the point that they're at now, right? Especially given that, you know, the genre that I'm a part of, hip hop, a lot of it has roots in North American Black culture, right? In that a lot of the samples that they used are based on soul songs, which are really just spiritual songs that people used to sing on plantations. You know, a lot of rap is about speaking to social justice, because it was the only way that message could be spread, to say, hey, you know, the police, they've got a specific target on people who look like us, you know, and
That's
things
right.
like that. So for me, Black history is also just a moment to acknowledge that, you know, the art that I do, the craft that I do, the freedom that I have has maybe come from the sacrifice of others, and to just be appreciative of that. But also just an opportunity again to learn, to be like, look, there's different history in Zimbabwe, different history in Canada, different history in the US, but there's similarities, and where can we learn from these similarities? And also, what can you learn from the differences?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Also, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.